Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good day. Podcast. I didn't stop my music. That's too funny. Anyways, this is the Truckers Podcast, FYI Conversations Without Barriers. It's 7:35 p.m. here in Southern Ontario, Canada. I hope everybody out there has had a good weekend. And of course, another work week coming up. And we're going to see how that plays out. I've been out here a couple times already today, venting about what is going on with these unprecedented and unwarranted tariffs imposed on Canada and Mexico. Trump's claims about Canada changes by the minute, by the hour, by the day, depending what kind of mood he's in. Sometimes it's Canada's treating the America unfairly, that we're difficult to deal with. That the United States is supplementing Canada in the tune of $200 billion. Sometimes it's $100 billion. Sometimes it's $300 billion. Whatever, some crazy, stupid number that comes into his head. Now it has to deal with the border, saying Canada is flooding the United States with fentanyl. And illegal crossings into the United States, killing hundreds of millions of Americans. We know this is not true. Less than 1%, and even less than that, when it comes to any illicit drugs getting into the United States from Canada. And of course, there's no large amount of people crossing into the United States from the northern border. We know that's not true as well. So he just, whatever mood he's in, whatever thoughts come into his head, that's his reasoning. Now, remember this. The little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C. is the one who has declared war on Canada, an economic war, not the other way around. Donald Trump has systematically dismantled the supply chain between Canada, United States, and Mexico. And the auto parts manufacturing here in Ontario says the punitive tariffs imposed by the American government will bring down the automotive production to a halt by the end of this week, and it will have devastating impacts on the overall supply chain. And these levies, slated to take effect on Tuesday, will leave tens of thousands of workers on both sides of the border jobless. So what I have to say to American people, are you prepared to get your layoff slips? Because Donald Trump has just written that for you. You're going to be out of a job. What does American people think about that? And the supply, the supply factories with the auto parts on, Canada, Mexico, in the United States, they too will face layoffs. Now, I want to get to what the whoops, where did it go here? Oh, there it is there. Couldn't see it because of my microphone. You know, Donald Trump said if Canada retaliates, the tariffs will go up. I don't know who the hell he thinks he is. Thinking that we can't respond, that we're not allowed to respond, but we're going to respond. And it's not going to be good. It truly isn't. And here are all the ways Canada is striking back against that little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C. with these tariffs. So the United States orange president, Trump, has declared a trade war on Canada, prompting our federal government and provinces and territories to launch their own countermeasures to hit back at the American economy. And likewise, the Canadian government has pledged to hit the United States with retaliatory 25% tariffs on $150 billion worth of American goods coming into Canada. There will be an immediate $30 billion implemented on Tuesday, and the remaining $125 billion in 21 days. I would do it a whole lot sooner than 21 days. Those are the top line figures. But there's a slate of other actions the federal government and provinces are going to do and have already begun to enact. So let's just break them down a little bit. So the federal government, the first $30 billion phase of the Canadian counter-terrorist response will hit American products like orange juice, peanut butter, wine, spirits, beer, coffee, appliances, apparel, footwear, motorcycles, cosmetics, pulp and paper. The second $125 billion phase will include products like passenger vehicles and trucks, steel and aluminum, certain fruits and vegetables, aerospace products, beef, pork, dairy, recreational vehicles, recreational boats, and the list just goes on. The first phase is largely a consumer's goods that we would import from the United States, for which there is a replacement from other countries and replacements in our own country. We don't need your beef. We don't need your dairy. We don't need any of that. We have beef and dairy and plenty of it here in Canada. Now, the federal government and provinces have an obligation to support workers and people unjustly affected by this American decision. Now, like I said, that little orange man in the crack house in Washington has claimed that fentanyl flowing into the United States from Canada is the reason behind the decision to impose the tariffs. That was never the case before. I said whatever type of mood he's in, at whatever time of day or night it might be, he just comes up with some unrational fucking thoughts of why these tariffs should be imposed. We'll start with British Columbia. The BC Premier has called that little orange man's unprecedented attack. He said the province will support the federal government's actions and will work to protect BC workers and businesses. And on Saturday evening, EB said he's directed the BC Liquor Distribution Branch to immediately stop buying American liquor from U.S. states that predominantly vote Republican, known as the red states, and remove top-selling red state brands from the shelves of public liquor stores. The BC Premier also said he'd direct the provincial government and Crown corporations to exclude U.S. supplies from any new purchasing and procurement agreements. In the news release, EB's office said that the province is assessing private sector projections worth $20 billion, with the goal of getting them approved as quickly as possible and issuing the permits even faster. That was going to create about 6,000 jobs in rural and in all the communities. And he said that there are additional measures under consideration by the BC that could be introduced in the coming days and weeks. Alberta, that Trump's tariff decision will harm Canadians and Americans alike, and the strain, the important relationship between the two countries. And that, Canada is never going to trust the United States ever again. You've lost that trust. When it comes to Saskatchewan, in a statement, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe said Trump's decision to impose tariffs is disappointing and will damage both our countries' economics, workers, and consumers. The Premier of Saskatchewan has called on the federal government to strengthen the criminal code of Canada to toughen penalties for drug offenses and take all necessary measures to strengthen border security and the fentanyl removed from the communities in Canada and the United States. You do that in the United States, we'll take care of our people. And the Premier said he supports very targeted and specific retaliatory measures to initiate tariffs. And Saskatchewan exports are crucial to supporting food and energy security across North America and around the world, Mo said. We will also be working to ensure diversification of Saskatchewan markets for our goods. Should have been doing this. All provinces should be looking at diversifying our products, what we can around the world to begin with, and not just be a trading partner with the United States, because obviously the United States cannot be trusted. Manitoba. The Manitoba government announced that it was issuing a directive to Manitoba liquor and lotteries to stop the sale of American products in the province. That directly goes into effect on Tuesday. And the Manitoba Premier said on Sunday the provincial government will be working around the clock to protect jobs and the safeguard of their economy at the same time. Ontario, the largest manufacturing of all Canada, also said in a similar move as EB in Canoe, Ontario Premier Doug Ford has ordered the Liquor Control Board of Ontario to remove American products from its shelves starting on Tuesday. The LCBO is the largest purchaser of alcohol in the entire world. As only the wholesaler of alcohol in this province, LCBO will also remove American products from its catalog so that other Ontario-based restaurants and retailers can't order or restock U.S. products. Excuse me. Ford also said in a statement Saturday that he supports the federal government for the strong and focal response for the matches U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar. He also said Canada needs to maximize points of leverage and use them to maximize the effect. Canada has much of what America needs: high-grade nickel and other crucial minerals, energy, and electricity, uranium, potash, aluminum. Quebec, the Premier of Quebec, to fight for the Quebecers who will be affected by Trump's tariffs, and estimated more than 100,000 jobs will be lost in the province. He also and all other Canadian premiers support the federal government's retaliatory measures, and that Canada's counter-terrorists will benefit our companies by 25%. He also is looking at various solutions, including creating more jobs in Hydro-Quebec and fast tracking construction and infrastructure and health, education, and public transit sectors. New Brunswick. The New Brunswick Premier that Trump's terrorists will devastate the New Brunswick workers, business, and the economy, but his team is using every tool in their toolbox to defend and support the New Brunswicks and of all these tariffs. Nova Scotia. He said that the provincial procurement for American businesses look for ways to cancel existing contracts, double the cost of tolls on passenger vehicles and whatever coming into that province, and pass and direct the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation to remove all U.S. alcohol from their shelves on Tuesday. Prince Edward Island. Is looking for the other measures to implement to retaliate on these tariffs. Newfoundland and Labrador. One of the most dire warnings about Trump's terrorists, calling them an extraditional threat to Canada, an attack on Canadians, an attack on their values, an attack on our sovereignty. In a statement, he expects the federal government the action, a comprehensive approach to help impacted businesses, workers, and support and the service sectors. The Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut. The Northwest Territories Premier said in a statement, the aggressive and disappointed decision by the United States government to impose tariffs on all Canadian goods means that as the Northerns and as Canadians, we must prepare for increased economic uncertainty. Certainly, same with the United States. The Northwest Territories will also review procurement policies to eliminate purchases from U.S. companies where possible and halt the Northwest Territories Liquor and Cannabis Commission purchase of American goods. And these are significant measures, and we do not take them lightly, he said. We will continue to identify meaningful ways to stand in solidarity with our fellow Canadians. The Yukon Premier that Trump's tariffs are an insult to our friendship and our partnership that it has existed between Canada and the United States for generations, and his government supports Canada's response. And we will keep working to strengthen our local economies, support our industries, break down barriers to interprovincial trade, and build new markets abroad. The government of the Yukon will work with the federal government to make sure that Yukon businesses impacted by Trump's tariffs are supported. Right across this great nation of ours, every single premier, every single province supports the federal government on retaliation measures and willing to do whatever it takes to protect their territories and their people. Like I said earlier, that little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C. has systematically ruined the supply chain between Canada and the United States, and is going to cost thousands of jobs on both sides of the border. Like I said, whatever mood Donald Trump is in, whatever time of day or night it is, whatever retarded thought he gets into his head, some excuse, he'll come up with another excuse. He has threatened Canadians, and he has threatened our sovereignty of this nation. He said earlier, a week ago, that he would use economic force to annex Canada and make it a 51st state. That's an attack on our sovereignty. Those are fighting words. See, ladies and gentlemen, when you have a bully in the playground thinking that he can push everybody around and bring people to their knees and beg for mercy, what happens here is that push comes to shove, the gloves come off. So the gloves are off. That little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C. has started this trade war, has started this fight. And we're going to see it right through to the end, because we are not backing down. This is the third time or something like that I've been out here today, getting this message out there loud and clear. Canada is not afraid of the United States. We will inflict economic pain as much as you will on us. And we're not going to give. Our government of Canada is going to protect Canadian jobs, is going to protect Canadians. And they're going to do it financially as well. Not like the American counterparts over there. Once this all starts and you lose your job in the United States, you think that little orange man is going to help you financially? Working out of that crack house in Washington, D.C.? No, the fuck he isn't. He's not going to support you financially. He has systematically given your unemployment papers to you. and he doesn't give a shit. And other things that I can say here, in Congress, in the United States, are you afraid of Donald Trump? Are you afraid there's going to be repercussions from your co-workers in the United States government? Are you afraid to grow a pair and stand up to Donald Trump? Because Canada isn't afraid. Mexico has turned around and implemented and placed tariffs on the United States as well. See, Donald Trump thinks he can push the world around. He said back weeks ago that he wants Greenland, and he said he would take it by military force if necessary. He said the same thing about the Panama Canal. He said that he would use economic force to annex Canada and make it a 51st state. He insults our Prime Minister by calling him a governor of Canada. That is an insult on Canadians. You don't insult us. You don't threaten our sovereignty. You think that you're going to get away with it. It's not going to happen. The relationship between Canada and the United States will never be the same again, no matter who is president of the United States, whether it's a Democrat or another Republican. We will never trust your words ever again. That friendship that we have is jeopardized. That trust is gone. When you stab somebody in the back, your best friend, you lose that trust. You'd never get that trust back. You never get that friendship back. And that's what's taken place here between Canada and the United States. We have the largest undefended border in the world. And you got to remember, back in 2018, 2019, Donald Trump, when he was president the first time, he wanted to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement. So we renegotiated it, and he signed it, and it's not up for renewal until next year. See, but Donald Trump doesn't know how to negotiate. He doesn't know anything about business. He doesn't know anything about economics. He doesn't understand economics 101 like most people would, right? He tells the American people that tariffs are a good thing, and that the tariffs that he imposed on Canada and China and Mexico is that those countries pay the tariff. That's not how it works. The companies that buy from Canada, they pay that tariff. It's a tax. that gets paid to the United States government. So he's taxing the American companies now at 25%. They have to pay that tax to the United States government. Now they're going to want that money back. So now those businesses are going to raise those prices on you, the American people. So your cost of living just went up 25%. Your energy costs has gone up 25%. It's going to be harder to keep your lights on. It's going to be harder. Your grocery bills just went up 25%. Inflation is already hard enough. You know how hard it's been. You know how hard it is to stretch your paycheck from week to week, to put food on the table, to feed your family, keep the lights on, pay the rent, or pay the mortgage. Now your cost of living just jumped 25%. Now you risk not even having a job. That supply chain between Canada and the United States is so integrated, is so intertwined, that there's going to be job losses on both sides, and that's going to happen effective immediately. And by the week's end, there are going to be thousands of people out of a job on both sides of the border. That little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C., he always blames problems in the United States on everybody else. Right? If it's not Canada, it's Mexico. If it's not Mexico, it's China. If it's not China, it's the Democrats. Donald Trump didn't do anything the first time when he was president of the United States. Too busy being on the golf course every day. He said that he would lower your cost of living on day one. Lower your cost of groceries. Lower your cost of energy. Lower your costs at the gas pumps. That's what he told you. And now he's doing the entire opposite. He's going to increase your cost of living 25% more than it already is. So he lied to you. That's what he does every day. He's a pathological liar. He's mentally incompetent. Doesn't understand how the world works. And he blames the United States problems on everybody else. You should always get your own backyard in order first. Right? You get your problems in order and you fix them. You don't blame everybody else for your problems. The problem is the southern border of the United States when it comes to fentanyl and the illicit drugs and marijuana and people flowing over the border from Florida all the way to California. The cartels getting these drugs into the United States. Then those drugs flow to Canada. They don't flow back the other way. It's your problem at the southern border, not at the northern border. And like I said, tomorrow morning, Trump will have another reason for these tariffs. Maybe in the next few hours he'll be on his Truth Social, thinking up some other insane fucking reasons why these tariffs are necessary. He changes his mind every minute, every second. And he comes up with some other artificial reason, other lie of why it's necessary for these tariffs on your biggest trading partner in the world, your best ally in the world. And this is how this little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C. is going to treat us. I got 2 words for Donald Trump, and those 2 words are fuck off. I'd love to say it to his face, believe me. I don't need to grow a pair to do that. I just do it. I just say it. I don't give a fuck. Canada, we're a bilingual country. We speak French and English in this country. Not only do I speak English, but I speak foul language fluently. Not afraid to use it. Not afraid to back it up neither. It's time that, sovereign nations around the world stand up to Trump. Unfortunately, Donald Trump chose to do this. It's really unfortunate. It's going to be unfortunate for the American people. It's going to be unfortunate for Canadians. It's going to be unfortunate for Mexican people. Because these economies are connected and integrated and intertwined. In the North American Free Trade Agreement, the supply chains that are so intertwined and interconnected and so important to each other. And Donald Trump systematically has fucked that up. So when you're out of a job in the United States, make sure you thank that little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C. Make sure you thank him for that. Make sure you thank him for fucking up your life. Say that to all Americans, Democrats and Republicans, because you're all going to feel the pain. And it's going to hurt. See, message to the Republicans out there who voted and supported Donald Trump: you get what you ask for in life. You ask for it, now you're going to get it. And now you're going to pay for it. I don't give a shit who you vote for, but Jesus, you put a convicted felon in the White House. You put a bigot, racist, pathological liar mentally incompetent person in the White House. So this is what you get. You asked for it, you got it. We're going to see how this is going to play out. Donald Trump has till Tuesday to change his mind. He has till Tuesday to change his mind. And if he doesn't, the repercussions are going to be severe. That's what's going to happen. Now it's just a wait and see. As I said earlier too, he said that he was well aware that Canada would retaliate. And like I said earlier, he said if Canada retaliates, the tariffs will go up. That's another threat. Oh, we're retaliating. $155 billion worth of retaliation. Dollar for dollar. And if it goes up, we'll match it. Donald Trump wants to crash the economies. Well, you, the American people, have something to say about that. You, the American people, need to grow a pair of balls and say something about it. Stand up to that little orange man in the crack house in Washington, D.C. And all his cronies he's put in his inner circle. So the rest of the crackheads and criminals that he puts in his inner circle to run your country. Light-minded, incompetent individuals. Well, you have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. I have a really early morning start to my day tomorrow. It's going to be a busy one for me. And we'll see by the end of the week how bad things are going to get for both sides. We'll be able to discuss that next Saturday morning. I guess that'll be the 8th of February at 8:30 in the morning. And we'll see who's going to be hollering then. So until then, enjoy the rest of your evening and what's left of your weekend. And we'll see you next Saturday morning at 8:30. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI, Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Good night, and wish all you Americans best of luck. And to my fellow Canadians, the same thing. Take care.